Welcome to my new calculus channel. My name is John Gabriel. In a previous video, I talked about how we got the mainstream calculus, and I showed you some of my notes which I had created when I was still a teenager, and how the mainstream calculus came to be. And I mentioned some of the things that I couldn't figure out for a long time. For example, the missing link. The missing link is how a connection was made between the derivative and the integral, and also how I came to realize that the mean value theorem is in fact the fundamental theorem of calculus. Well, what is commonly known as the fundamental theorem is derived in one step from the mean value theorem. Now, in this book, in this new article, well, it's actually not it's not a new article; it's an old article. I describe how I began to teach myself calculus and a lot of the things that I would ponder when I first began to study the calculus, things such as the analysis and the historical the historical reasons why the calculus was developed the way it was. For example, we have the tangent line problem and then the area problem, but it's pretty evident, it's pretty clear that both Newton and Leibniz didn't know what they were doing. The mainstream definition of derivative was actually an experimental tactic, an experimental strategy on both their parts. Now, Leibniz, being a more thorough mathematician than Newton, tried to well define it, and he got pretty close, but I mean, a miss by a millimeter is the same as a miss by a mile. Leibniz took the derivative and he tried to systematically define it, but he really failed as well, because he introduced an ill-formed concept called the infinitesimal. So neither of these two academics were able to realize the new calculus. The missing link is, in fact, how does this expression here on the left relate to the expression on the right? And I explained that in my first constructive proof. But before I got there, I actually came across, this is what I discovered. This formula here expresses the derivative or a finite difference in terms of the derivative. And the second formula that I came up with expresses it both in terms of a derivative and an integral. So both these formulas here are true. And I realized these long before I realized the new calculus. But these here don't really explain what is the connection. The first connection comes when one realizes that the mean value theorem is what makes calculus works. So without the mean value theorem, calculus doesn't work. In this article, Making Sense, I describe some of the ideas, and what I'd like is for you to read it and see how I actually came to realize the new calculus and what went through my mind as I was trying to make sense of the flawed mainstream calculus. Well, I hope this little chat will encourage you to go ahead and study it. This is the New Calculus channel, and my name is John Gabriel. Till next time, goodbye.